Today's video, we're going to talk about how much money do you need to start Google Ads nowadays. Really? Google Ads can be started out by anybody, anytime, any budget. I don't care. Don't give me this crap. You got to be rich, start a business, and get Google Ads to get customers for it. Because you could start a business doing anything, practically speaking, in the home services space and get somebody to do the work, and you're just in charge of generating the leads and making the sales, answer the phone, put a Google Ads account together, and for as little as $1 a day, have a campaign start to get built up. Now, is that something for everybody? Obviously, no, it's not. And there's plenty of drawbacks to just starting with $1 a day. I'm going to talk about what's ideal versus what you could start out with. And then if you do throw a ton of cash at it, what are the benefits of that? Of which a lot of people don't truly understand the differences there, because there's a diminishing return on the amount of benefit you get by throwing a lot of money at Google Ads at the beginning of building up your account, or right away or all at once. Whereas when you actually spend less, it's actually more advantageous to you in terms of your profitability, your margins, all of this. It's just slower to get started as well. And for the most part, there's kind of a sweet spot in the middle that I generally advise at least all our clients at our firm to go with, and what I would recommend to you as well, because it takes kind of the best of both worlds of what you get with a tiny micro budget and what you would also get with a huge budget as well. Get the best of both worlds there. So I'm going to explain how these dynamics work, on why a big budget is not all it's cracked up to be, as well as a tiny budget as well, and what is better suited for somebody just starting out versus a mid-range business and so forth. Granted, you could get by with starting out with as little as $1 a day on an ad budget, literally, not just figuratively or hypothetically, but literally. And it's certainly not ideal, though, for established businesses to do that where time is money. It's just like a good analogy here. No offense to anybody that wants to be an intern. We've got interns working at our firm. But if you think about this practically, it's similar to an intern. An intern can offer literally to work for free, but if you have to spend so much time training that person up to where they're useful, free is actually worse than nothing, or worse than free, if you will, at the end of the day. So there's a point in time where you put so much effort into your Google Ads efforts, because you got to maintain that tracking to go with your ads, regardless if you're spending $1 a day, $10 a day, $1,000 a day. And when you spend the effort to do that and maintaining a landing page, and then you're only spending $1 a day as a business, just doesn't make actual rational sense at the end of the day. So you would have to do more than that. Whereas on somebody on the other end of the spectrum, like I was starting out the video describing, where you are just getting your feet wet in business, maybe you're just starting out, you're branching out. Let's say you were working for an electrical services company, you want to start your own company. You literally could start your own campaign promoting your own business before even quitting that job and start to get a feel of the system, and without really needing basically any money to do it. And once you kind of understand you've hit your numbers, you're not paying too much for a phone call, then you can start to ramp it up, quit, and whatnot. It's a great transition for a new guy. And that could be much better for him because time isn't money. He's got nothing but time. He can wait a year for it to work. It doesn't matter. He'll just work at his job a year later, and that's it. That said, you need to spend to get data in your account in order to get to profitability in any competitive market, at least. But throwing gobs of money at it also doesn't help like you think it does. So in other words here, Google Ads, a big part of getting results out of it is actually getting history on the platform. And the reason for that is because Google assumes that you coming in to a market that has competitors in it, at least, you're the average shithead who shows up for 90 days and barely tries and has dog shit ads and dog shit landing pages and no history on Google Business Profile, no reviews to prove that you actually can deliver a good service or product. You're going to try it for a little bit and then you're going to be gone. And they know this because that's what most new guys do. So you're getting profiled, Google's prejudice in this way, but for good reason. They don't want their users to be seeing ads of these fly-by-night guys coming in and out of the system all the time. Or an established company that's never advertised and has probably never been able to afford to advertise because their business isn't that efficient, or the product or service isn't that good, or whatever. For that matter, you've got to prove to the system that you're actually worthy of the good traffic in your niche market. They're going to give you the shitty traffic at the beginning because they think you're just going to be a one-hit wonder, But if you set up your ads, your landing pages, all of it right, they'll give you good traffic eventually. And you may say, whoa, 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 Corey, I'm bidding on the best terms already. I already know I've got the good traffic. When somebody types in plumber near me, I'm showing up. What are you talking about? The reality is, plumber near me, Google's going to subsegment the traffic on that keyword 1,000 times, identify the percentage of it that actually has buyers based upon what the users themselves that search for that are like, how old they are, what's their income, what part of the city they're from, blah, 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 blah. And they're going to give the best portion of that keyword's traffic to the top advertisers they like the most with the best history and the best usage metrics in terms of click-through rate, conversion rate, average review rating, and make sure that to encourage them to stay around essentially, and because it's going to help Google their goal to get more people to want to click on ads in the future. And they're going to give you, the new advertiser, the shitty part of the traffic because they think you're not worthy of anything. And until you prove them otherwise, they're not going to think you should get the good traffic, and they're going to charge you an arm and a leg for the traffic on top of it. And that flips once you've proven yourself in the system. Well, when that all has to happen, you spending $1 a day is going to make it take a long time for the system to figure out that you're actually not like these other douchebags who are starting up an ad, spending 5 minutes on it, thinking that they should get to be a billionaire from that 5 minutes effort they've put in, and that you are the next big swinging dick coming into the system, and you need to take over everything because you've got a better model. It's open to anybody at any time. If you just put the effort in to do it better than your competition, they want to give all the money to you, not a little bit, but all of it. If you do better than everybody else, because that helps Google out, helps their users out. And it's very, very discriminatory. Once Google pegs you as somebody who is not at that level, you're going to get the dog shit traffic. You're going to get charged an ass load for clicks and forever. And it'll never make any money. So you got to spend to just be at a point where the cost per click and the conversion rates on the traffic you're going to get is high enough or good enough so that you have profit left over after paying for the ads and delivering that product or service you deliver at the end of the day. And so if you spend $1 a day, this could take a year. Or if you were spending $100 a day, this might be able to take you a month in comparison. I know those ratios don't really make sense, but you get what I'm saying. But on the flip side of this, a lot of times clients will say, hey, Corey, you were recommending a $100 a day budget on your proposal. What if we threw $1,000 a day at it at the beginning to rack up data quicker and get to a cost per lead that's better quicker? And what I always tell them is, because I picked this up over the years, given this is all I do all day long is just study Google Ads trends and data and charts, there's a diminishing return on the increase in spend in which it will be able to generate the results, the cost per lead or ROAS that you want sooner. You're not going to get it sooner because you just double, triple, 10x. So in other words, if you're at 100 a day and you go to 1,000 a day, typically that's not going to speed up the time it takes to get to a $50 lead cost or 1,000% ROAS by 10x. It won't. It might increase it by 2x. And so the question really is it worth it actually to spend that extra money to get that 2x? Knowing and given that during that time in which you are spending 1,000 a day versus 100, you're not profitable and you're going to be way farther in the hole before you get to the profitability that you want, that is ROAS that you want, and then have a lot bigger of a hole to dig out of, because everything you're doing at the beginning to get to that minimum ROAS and build that reputation up with Google, and for Google to find your customer, given that they're going to find the part of the market that resonates with your product and service and website and all that and sales process and all that, that you may be 50,000 in the hole before you get to profitability. And then you've got to do business for the next year to dig yourself out of that hole in terms of the profit you're going to make. Do you want to do that to yourself versus spending 100 a day? And yes, it takes a year to get to profitability, but once you get there, you're only 10,000 in the hole. So it's something you always got to consider, and really what the dynamics are of the system that you're getting into with Google Ads and how it ultimately works. To kind of demonstrate this, what I have on this chart here on the board is a chart that shows on the x-axis spend per day, so your daily budget that you're going to start out with on Google Ads. This would be for a campaign or an overall account, depending on however you want to look at it, and a benefit per dollar. Now, I will say that if you have history in your account and you go with the new campaign, it's going to happen much quicker than it would otherwise, because Google is actually going to take the data that you've amassed from one campaign and apply it to your new campaign. For a new account, they don't have any data, so it's going to take way longer. What you're always doing at the beginning, because if you're smart, like I've mentioned on my other videos, you figure out what, after your expenses, what ROAS or what cost per lead do you need to be profitable. And then everything is just a race to get there, because once you get there, it's all a downhill slide. you're gonna build more profitability using money that is basically already coming in. You're playing with your winnings. Make profit, put more ad spend, you buy more ad spend, you make more profit, you buy even more ad spend, and it takes nothing out of your pocket to keep developing. Versus at the beginning, it's all just keeps coming out of your pocket again and again and again, just to be able to build up the history you need to get to profitability. And so with that, the benefit that you're going to get out of speeding up the time it takes to get to that break-even ROAS or break-even cost per lead you need to be profitable is going to go down the more you're spending. Or in other words, the benefit per dollar goes down the more that you're spending. So it will actually, every dollar you spend with a $1 a day budget will go to getting you to a certain ROAS or ROI or return, a break-even return, not the fastest, but it will give you the best bang for your buck out of everything else you could potentially start out with in terms of a daily budget for several reasons. One of which, it takes Google time to figure out how to actually get you a return. And so just throwing money at it doesn't give Google's algorithm time to learn anything. You can almost think about it like, you know how when you go into ChatGPT and you type in a question and it says thinking, it's not an instantaneous thing. So when you advertise and you throw a whole, like if you were to throw $1 million budget at a campaign in a competitive market, it's not going to figure out how to get you 1,000% ROAS in a day. Doesn't really work like that. It takes time in the system, that is money spent to get clicks, for Google to recognize with your tracking data what works, what doesn't work, how well it performs, where you should be in terms of the type of quality traffic you're getting and so forth. But also identifying who it is that is in your market that actually is going to convert well from you, from your ads, and that how to send you the right exact type of traffic that works with your site, your sales process, and so forth. And so when you throw money at it quickly, it doesn't actually utilize the money that you're throwing at it as efficiently as if you were to throw it more slowly. So, but there's a sweet spot with this, obviously, because if you go $1 a day, yes, it's going to be able to have plenty of time to adapt to the rate of data coming in. It's just going to still take forever because it's still only $1 a day. Whereas if you spend 1,000 a day, it's having to really think quickly, if you will, because the data's coming in like at the speed and pressure of a fire hose and can't utilize it all as fast as it's coming in, or at least as nearly as efficiently as it would be when you're spending $1 a day. So the question is, to what level of starting budget should I start out with if money isn't necessarily all there is in terms of the key issues I have starting out, and I also don't have unlimited time to get this working? Like, this is a hot idea. I can't wait 3 years for this to really be fully scaled up because the opportunity will have passed. So my suggestion to my clients always is this $100 a day budget US is typically kind of where the sweet spot is, where there's enough data coming in that it's not going to take us years to get to a certain break-even profitability with our client's account. And depending on the level of competition, it could be a month to a year, but it's usually in that general range. If we go with $1,000 a day, instead of it taking a year, it might take 6 months, but we'll lose so much money during that 6 months, the client will typically not want to do it. And I tell that to the client up front. Whereas if we're going to do $10 a day, it's going to take 18 to 24 to 36 months for us to build up the amount of data that we need. The $100 a day would get us to much sooner, even though each dollar spent at the $10 a day will be utilized better by the algorithm to get us to the ROAS quicker than we would with the $100 a day. So I want to typically get to break even within 6 months. So $100 a day is right around just like perfect. It's right that perfect middle ground between spending too much and too little. Whereas if we spend $10 a day, it's going to take 24 months to get there. So we don't want that. And if we spend $1,000 a day, we'll get there in 3 months, but we're going to piss so much money away at the beginning that we don't want to do that either. So the amount of value we get out of each dollar spent in terms of getting us to break even ROAS is better the less we spend per day at the beginning, but we'll still extend the time that it takes to get to ROAS in terms of time. So you got two factors here. You got time and then money that determine how quickly you're going to get to break even, right? Time is that will help you if you give the system time to think, and also money is going to help you get the amount of data you need for the system to actually make some decisions as well. And so what your goal is to do is to give it a decent amount of time and a decent amount of money to decide what to do, versus purely try to throw money at it and no time, or just giving all the time but barely any money, so that yes, it's utilizing every dollar at the highest level it can, but it still takes for freaking ever to get to break-even profitability. And also given that all the money in PPC is made in the scaling it part, getting to the break even and then scaling the budget up. So if it takes 24 months to get to break even though you wasted only $1,000 the whole time to get to break even, let's say that's the case. Well, at month 24, when you start to scale, by month 36, you only have scaled a little bit. Whereas if you would have got to break even by month 6 and started scaling at that point, by the time you get to month 36, you'll be way, way ahead of what it would have been like if you started to scale at month 24. So you can see how the contrast works here, basically, where you ultimately throw more money at it. You'll get to break even quicker, more loss up at the beginning, but then you get scale quicker. Whereas if you want to throw less money away to get to break even, you can do that, but it'll take longer to where you're scaling. So there's some really sophisticated math you could do here to kind of figure out mathematically wise, where would be the perfect point in which you set the daily budget in which after 36 months, you'll be ahead in terms of net total profit. I think that's overthinking it for the most part. Whereas you could just start out with 100 a day like I do and just keep it simple. Just know that those are always the two considerations. Money isn't scaling, but the quicker you get to break even, generally the more actual negative profit you're have accumulated, or debt, if you will, before you get to break even trying to do that. So do you want to go negative $50,000 in the hole before you get to break even so you can start scaling quickly? Or do you want to go net negative $10,000 in the hole before you get to break even and then have it take way longer than what it normally would from day one when you started to get to a certain level of profitability in your business? That's up to you to decide. Ultimately, businesses that are starting out with little capital don't really have a choice in the matter. They have to start slow because they cannot throw $50,000 in the hole to get to break even so they can start scaling quicker or right away. They just don't have that option. Whereas if you do have a few $100,000 in the bank to make some moves, you're going to have to then seriously decide, do I want to throw $50,000 at this to get this to break even in 3 months so I can start scaling it quickly? Just knowing that you are going to have that initial 30 to 50 grand that you spend up front to get there quickly, to get to break even quickly, you're going to have almost all that be burnt money, if you will. Not to say all of it would be, but the return's going to be terrible. You're going to have lost a lot of money in those first 3 months to get it going that quickly. So ultimately, some other considerations here is search versus display. With search, throwing more money at it to get it to break even quicker is actually more beneficial than doing it with display, because Google's algorithm knows a lot more about their users activity and behavior on the search platform than they know about it on their display network. Even on their own websites, on YouTube, on Gmail, for the ad placements there, it's a lot more productive to throw a whole bunch of money at it sooner. Whereas with display campaigns, if you do that, almost all of it gets wasted right away trying to do that. And you almost always have to go low and slow with like even a demand gen campaign, because if you don't, you're just going to purely throw all your money away. It's annoying, but a lot of times with a demand gen campaign, we'll have to run a $10 a day budget starting out, and we'll have to run that baby for 6 months before it really gets any chance at all to do anything, and maybe 12 months before we get to break even on it, at least going after cold traffic. Because there's a lot of variables for Google to test. If you think about it, it makes sense. Because on Google search, let's say even plumbing and a common niche like this, they know real well, especially since they combine all the advertisers' data from all the cities and whatnot, what converts, what doesn't, and they got that going for you starting out. Whereas if you run a YouTube ad in a demand gen campaign that really there's no competition doing that, they've got to figure out everything from scratch. And not only that, it's not about just whether the ad will show or not for a certain keyword. It's, ultimately, do they have it on this placement or that placement or this page or that page? There's all these other variables baked into the mix, if you will. So you have to be ultra patient about display campaigns in comparison to search campaigns, and just throwing money at it typically doesn't work. You still want to do it, of course, because where there's no competition, returns are higher than average, higher than even search. A lot of people don't think that because they try display campaigns for a while, displaying any non-search engine ads just for clarification. And they won't make money on it right away, so they'll give up, not knowing that it takes a long time for the algorithm to start studying the data coming in, what works, what doesn't work. And by the way, this is also where it's helpful to use micro-conversions so that you can start at least gathering some data that's going to tell the algorithm something, so it actually can start improving, what websites you're showing up on and so forth to actually make the campaign grow and work over time, get to break even eventually. But it's still worth it because it could be a much higher ROI, and it will just keep scaling and scaling, and way more than search. If you get a display campaign working on, we've had many markets where, like for instance, just one in the mole removal product space, we had the amount of money that we were making on display was astronomically higher than what we could get through search in that market. Once it gets to it usually just scales and scales and scales and scales. So what my general advice to people is to whatever money, I tell people, whatever money you invest into it, just assume it's gone for a long, long time. But eventually the algorithm will learn more and more over time. And eventually, maybe 12, 18 months into the process, with that tiny baby budget of $10 a day, it'll eventually finally figure something out. And then it'll just keep going and going and going and going and going and add so much extra sales to your business. And so what you do is you just do it on the side, knowing it's on a whole different time scale than what you're going to get with search typically. Now, some markets, it can work right away too. Depends on how good you are at creating an offer that's relevant to your market and running with that so that you can offer a free demo and there's no demo offered in your market and people will see that and jump on it right away, for instance. It's actually really, really exciting for the user. You can get things to work much quicker versus here's a sale on this product, and that is enticing but not that enticing. You take money from search and you run display ads and you start running that and you keep improving, and slowly, as long as over every quarter you're getting more sales than you were before, you keep at it, and eventually it'll work. Search, it's the same thing, but it generally happens much quicker. Therefore, that's why you start with search. Google Ads knows better what to do with $1 a day at the beginning than $100 a day using existing conversion data. So what I mean by this is also, I wanted to mention here, if you've already been advertising at all, like I said, they're going to use data from one campaign to another. But when you start out with $1 a day on a new campaign, it's actually going to work much, much better in terms of getting to break even at ROAS, because Google has amassed so much learning about who buys your product or service, assuming other campaigns have sold that same product or service, that it already knows there's a small pocket of people that they know already from when they crunch all the data on their end that are a perfect candidate for your product, and ads should show up for them thereof. When you start to expand that to larger numbers, bigger spend, you got to get in front of larger numbers of people. They actually are less certain about who would be that perfect candidate. And actually what it ends up being is they know this small pool of people are a perfect candidate. They know this pool of people is a pretty good candidate. Then they know this pool of people here is a little, they're okay candidate. They should buy, but not totally for sure. And then it just keeps going and going. Ultimately, this is how, by the way, like with lookalike audiences or similar audiences in Google Ads with demand gen campaigns, this is kind of how it works. When you got the 1x, 2x, 3x in terms of lookalike audiences in Facebook, for instance, that's what's ultimately going on. So when you have data in your account, you start out with $1 a day, you're tapping in basically into this. Whereas if you're doing 100 a day, you're tapping into this, and therefore, if you need an ROI right away, it's better to start with the $1 a day because you're probably going to get a really great ROI right away and get to break even right away. It'll just take longer, of course, to scale up, because if you have bigger budgets at the beginning, that algorithm is going to start getting extra supplement data to figure out who buys faster than it would get otherwise, if that makes sense. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you should. I've got the best information you're going to find on this channel anywhere else online. I've got 20 years of experience doing ads, which is why you're going to get the best information about how to make millions of dollars a year running ads for your business here. If you haven't, by the way, checked out my written work, you should see that on my site at guaranteedppc.com/blog. I'm also very active on this channel as well as online. You can ask me a question about anything in the comment section if you leave me a comment below. You can also, by the way, reach me through my Discord. I've got a link to that in the video description. You can also reach out to me through my site at guaranteedppc.com, where I offer private coaching and consulting, done for you management of ads on a guaranteed basis, where we will not charge our clients a management fee until you get a certain minimum lift in your profitability up front. Also, we sell ad templates, so if you're in a market we've already gotten and delivered results to a client in, you can buy our template that works for a city that they're not in or a country that they're not in and get the same results we did without going through all the trials and testing that we had to go through to find out the perfect ad, perfect landing page, and so forth that works in your type of niche. With that said, going back to and go full circle on everything I kind of described here on this video and what you can walk away with it with. So the name of the game is always, like I mentioned, is time is money at the end of the day. The main benefit that we have as somebody who's successful in business is we have money to deploy. And with money to deploy, we can get things done faster than other people in the market can get them done, given that it takes money up front to build infrastructure to get shit handled. And therefore, when you're successful in business, you should basically eventually get to where you're unstoppable, because you can get so much done quicker than other people that are underneath you. There should be eventually no way for them to catch you, as long as you're willing to really reinvest everything at the beginning and not just take money out of what you're doing right away. So with that said, you have money that you've saved. You could throw lots of money at a campaign really quickly and get to where you could scale up a campaign really quickly. And eventually it'll all pay for itself at the end of the day and make up for the massive money that you lost up front to get things going quickly. Because usually if you look at it a wide enough time scale, going 10 years in, spending that extra $50K to get it to where it was at break even and starting to be able to be scaled in 3 months versus 6 months will make a big difference, because at year 10, you're going to be making $100,000 in profit a month. So actually in the long run, that money isn't wasted. Short term, it certainly seems like it, which is why when you're going to make money with Google Ads, you always got to look long term and with a broad view. Because if you just look at I'm not making money, you're just going to be one of the 90% of people in the PPC graveyard because you're too impatient. And if it were that easy, everybody would do it. You invest money into the system to get to break even, and then all the money's made after the fact. And people look at things like, the ad's running, so therefore it should make money. That's not how it works. You got to train the algorithm on who your customer is, get reputation with the algorithm, and so forth. So at the end of the day, your goal should be to have money to deploy to get things going quicker. So at least at the beginning, if you don't have much money, once you get something scaled up, the second campaign you run can be scaled quicker than the first. The third can be scaled quicker than the second, and on and on and on. And eventually, it's very much like if you were to roll a snowball down a hill. At first, it's not going to roll very fast, but the bigger it gets, the faster it fucking rolls. And that's the type of position you want to get yourself in at the end of the day if you're ever going to be rich at doing this PPC shit. So you don't have to have a lot of money. Use what you have, which is time, to your advantage to get more out of each dollar spent at the beginning than the rich guy would get. And if you're rich, just steamroll your way over all these small guys by throwing money at it. That's really the way. Just don't look at it as a lot of rich guys are going to say, I've invested into this a month already, or I've spent $5,000, or I spent $10,000, it's not working. I got to pull out. You got to pay attention to the big picture on things, because what you'll see is your profits are going up. Let's say your line of profitability is here, and you started out here and your profits are creeping up, and they'll say, it's so profitable. This is just good. What do you mean? This is not working. And really, if they would have just followed this out, drew it out on a chart, they would have waited 3-4 more months. They would have got to break even. They're so fucking impatient, even though they have tons of money, and this shouldn't matter to them. They still operate this way because in their world, I understand why it is, why they think like they do, because everything else doesn't work that way, right? If you hire an employee and 6 months later, they basically got no sales, if they're a salesperson, you can pretty damn well expect that they're not going to continue to get sales, or they got maybe 20% of the sales that they need for you to cover their expense. With Google Ads, it's not the case at all. Everything else in your business doesn't run off of an algorithm. Therefore, you can't treat it like that. But when shit's running off of an algorithm, that's how it works. It's just the same thing like with YouTube or anything else on social media. It's all run by algorithms. Anybody who builds a following on social media understands you need viewers to train the algorithm how to find you more viewers. And then those viewers help the algorithm find you more viewers. And they're not going to just show your content to everybody for your benefit, annoying the fuck out of everybody to help you quickly find your viewers. No, they're going to slowly test you out. Slowly, you'll get more and more and more. And it'll use the data it has at the given time to make a slightly bigger risk on showing your stuff to a few more people, and then think a little bit more, and then now we're confident to show you a little bit more because now we crunched all the data again, and now we know a little bit more about who your viewer is than before. And so now we can show you, and that's how the ads work ultimately at the end of the day. And unless you're prepared to deal with that, just don't even try, because you're going to end up being disappointed, and it was all pointless waste of time. Lots and lots of people spend all this time to set up their ads, and because it's not working in a couple months already, it's not a break even, they just give up, which is the dumbest thing ever. You need to look at your numbers and see if they're improving and chart it out and see how long is it going to take at the level of improvement it's gaining steam by and on is it going to take. And if it's not forever, just stay with it. Because guess what? Even if it takes a year to make money, what you're making on year 5 every month is going to be like, whatever you lost up here to get it is like asswipe. But people don't like to view things that way. They want to view it as, I'll invest in it when it starts working. And that's the opposite of how this works. Fucking complete opposite. You invest up front to get it to work, not the other way around. Wrap it up with that. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. If you want to see another video, click here. It is one of my best ones.